Okay, well, good morning, everybody. The early bird catches the worm, as they say. So here we have all of the early birds. First session of the week. Welcome everybody to Davos, and welcome here to the Infosys Pavilion. My name is Derek O'Halloran. I'm actually with the World Economic Forum. I head up our digital economy and society work there, as well as the technology industries. Very excited to have an opportunity to have a great discussion this morning on digital transformation, a topic I think that's front and center for every business, but perhaps with more questions than answers in many cases. We do see that we have at least some answers and some guidance for those answers been provided by some of the team at Infosys. And I think we'll use some of the insights here maybe to kickstart a discussion around some of the key topics here. Very happy to be joined by some great colleagues here. First of all, our host, Salil, CEO of Infosys. I think perhaps needs no introduction, but thank you, Salil, for hosting us here this morning. And we also have Hans. Hans is CFO and a member of the executive committee for Adecco. And interestingly, from a CFO position, actually leads the digital transformation program for Adecco globally. And we have Miguel, who is the head of Salesforce International, responsible for all business outside of North America for Salesforce. So thank you all. I mean, maybe that's your name and your formal role, but you know it's early and we're all just here together. Maybe you want to let us know one thing about yourself each. Let's start maybe with Miguel.
So good morning. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Derek, for the intro. I have a couple of cool things to share with you about myself. So first of all, I'm not necessarily a digital native. I'm a middle-aged person. I just turned 50. But I did study engineering. And the one thing that very cool that is happening now is my thesis was on artificial intelligence. At the time, nobody was like thinking about artificial intelligence. In fact, for 25 years in my career, nobody talked about artificial intelligence. So now it's back. But my passion is something that I have very close to my heart, in this case, on the other side of the heart, which is this. Nothing to do with this panel, but you wanted a fun and human fact. So myself, my family, we support a school in Nairobi, Kenya for 1,000 kids. And, you know, we love for people to help, and, you know, we're changing the lives of these kids, and it's very important.
Great.
Good morning. Needless to say, if you're the CFO, your passion can only be the numbers. But beyond that, I mean, it's what you said. I think one thing we forget, it's how privileged you are where you're born. And maybe some people are not so privileged. And I think bringing people along that and children is something which is also close to my heart.
So good morning, everyone. Miguel shared with me earlier today that maybe the next time we do this, we should do a lunch session, not a breakfast session, because this obviously is a very early session. The thing I wanted to share with everyone is, first, welcome to the Infosys Pavilion. I've been in this role for a year, and it's really been an exciting journey, even if it's been somewhat exhausting. The thing that's most exciting is how dedicated our clients and our employees are for creating the purpose that we are driving through. And part of that is the change, the digital transformation change. And I'm excited to be part of that change with our clients. So.
Great, thank you, thank you. Well, maybe just to be fair, I'll share also maybe one thing from my side. So my thesis was actually in philosophy, and everybody was asking for many years, why on earth, how do you ever apply that? And now when we think about technology, the application of AI and IoT, suddenly it becomes useful. So there you go. Okay, well, let's dive in. I think it would be great to maybe get some a little bit of overview of the insights from the paper, Salil, to kick us off here. So maybe I might ask you to just run through a couple of the key salient points that came out of the work that you ran, if you wouldn't mind.
Perfect. Thanks, Derek. And you should have on your chairs the research that was done. In fact, it was done by the Infosys Leadership Institute and Jeff and his team have worked on it, and they're all here if you have any questions later on. But what we saw is exciting. There are really three groupings of companies that we saw: visionaries, explorers, and watchers. And we have details on how some of these groups of companies are transforming their business. Visionaries related to a comprehensive change. Watchers focus more on some single elements of change. And explorers really focus on the experience element, which is the first element most companies have been driving through. This is a chart which, if you focus on one thing, if you look at the diagram that reflects how visionaries are working across a scale of initiatives. In our research, we found 22 areas of focus, and visionaries really drive that change across all of those areas. And that makes a huge impact into their companies. This is somewhat controversial, and you'll hear different views, certainly from the panel, but even maybe amongst yourselves. This is how we saw various sectors driving or adopting digital transformation in the research. And there's some nuance to it that we can share with you potentially as we go through the questions here on the discussion. And then finally, there were some barriers to making the change. And it's not surprising there's barriers that relate to an environment of the legacy technology. And you'll hear again in different cases, one of the accelerators is nimbleness. Having this legacy environment sometimes make things slow. And of course, another huge barrier has been availability of skills, both change management skills, but also really digital skills, whether they're liberal arts skills, whether they're experience skills, whether they're design skills. And these become critical barriers. And we'll talk a little bit later in the panel about reskilling and how that brings a broader set of people to deploy towards digital. So those were some of the very high-level research findings I wanted to share. There's a report, again, on your chair, and there's actually a little bit of a demo that we have in the back for those who are interested as well. So back to you, Derek.
Great. Thanks, Salil. I think lots of very interesting insights that came from the report. I think very striking for me as we ran through there on that spidergram where it showed all the 22 different areas. I mean, a really marked difference between the activities of the visionaries versus the others. And that's quite a big gap in terms of what they're actually doing.
It's a little bit depressing. It's a little bit depressing to see the watchers. They're not doing anything.
Right.
Can you, I mean, look at this.
Yeah.
I mean, these are, I mean, I'm not saying that every company is using all these technologies, but some of them are already mainstream. And to be a watcher and pretty much don't be concerned or touching any of these is worrying.
Yeah.
And there are 20% of them.
Yeah, and even with the explorers, which is the bulk, I mean, there's still a big gap. I mean, I guess this is also reflective of perhaps the recognition that digital transformation is something that everybody needs to focus on has increasingly been on companies' minds for the past couple of years. But there's still big questions on how. What does that really mean? And I do want to get into some of the how and some of the things that you guys see and also learn. But just before we do that, maybe Hans and Miguel, maybe just to kind of build on some of this paper, what are some of the, at a macro level of the context, what are some of the big things that you see out there that in terms of trends that we should all be aware of?
Sure. I would like to see the list of companies. It would be a great investment thesis on which stocks to short and which to be long on. You could make an investment thesis. On a more serious note, I'm working at the Adecco group. We put more than 1 million people at work at our customers every day. So we see a lot in what's going on into the economy. We do Amazons, I can fill the day with what we do. But what's important going forward, if you look first at the macro level, new opportunities are clearly emerging. But your current business model and your people are not where the opportunity is. Because that needs new skill sets. It's need to rethink how you work with your customers, what value do you add, and that is important. So before going into detail, I think for each company it's important to recognize where are the future opportunities and where is your current business model, the talent, your work processes. And I think that's very important.
Yeah, thank you, Hans. So we are very lucky at Salesforce. I think there are a few things that really matter, to CEOs. One is digital transformation, but the other one is customer centricity. And at Salesforce, we do only one thing: help customers digitally transform around their customers, help our customers connect with their customers in whole new ways. So some of the comments that I'm going to make, Derek, relate to the customer, the way to digitally transform around the customers. Okay, so we have 200,000 customers in the world, and what we've done in the last year and a half is we went to, probably 400, 500 of them and studied what they did with Salesforce technology. And we concluded that there are three types, and it's funny because we did it our own way, and we ended up pretty much on a similar conclusion. There are three types of customers with three different mindsets. The mindset, what we call Renovate, which I want to believe it's a bit more sophisticated than the watchers. Probably we didn't watch any watchers because they were too boring for us to go and talk to them, and they are not our customers. But within our customers, the lower end of the less sophisticated mindset is what we call the Renovate mindset. And these are people that simply just are using technology to basically to lift and shift current operating models and business processes. And this is like making insurance salespeople more productive, or deflecting calls from call centers and making the call center agents very, very productive, etc. So nothing major, but actually it's a must. Then we have the next category, which is bulk, which is a middle category in your case, and there we call it the evolve. Okay, and these people are evolving their business model. They're realizing they can, with the new technology, they can really get closer to the customer, better understand the customer, provide a better customer experience, and they are starting to transform really from inside out. So, for instance, insurance, to keep the same example, they do now. It's much easier to file a claim when you have an accident, etc. With an insurer. It's much more digital. Or if you go to the Adidas website, I mean, now you can really have a profile there. They have a 360 view of you. They make recommendations based on your past experience. By the way, you go to a store, and if they recognize you, they give you a similar experience that they gave you at the online. So we're seeing more and more customers going into the evolve mindset. And then there is the final mindset, which is I would say the ultimate mindset, which is companies that are the transcend mindset. And these are companies that they're not afraid of transforming their own and disrupting their own businesses, and trying to own bigger parts of the industry. Think about airlines. Some airlines are actually not interested in selling their seats on the planes. They're also interested in owning the travel journey, the cars, the hotels, and they create normally a network of partners to drive that. There's a very good example that you're going to see very soon in the telco industry. Telco companies have so much data on all of us. Location, the spend, the times of the day, everything. And they are now partnering. They created like a fourth layer of information, which is data, and they're partnering with their consumers, with their users, and say, listen, can we jointly, because they don't want to obviously use the data without the permission of the users. And they're creating new business models, and they're really transforming the industry. I wouldn't be surprised if in 10, 20 years, 80% of the business of a telco is about using and exploiting and monetizing the data of their customers.
Great, yeah. I mean, at this point about how you shift and what the core value is, interesting discussion recently with an global executive of a bank, and the question they were grappling with in their board is, in 5 years, will you need banks to do banking? And their conclusion was no. So then they say, okay, well, what else? How else do we add value in a new way? Your point about customer centricity, I mean, Hans, your business is a very interesting business. You pointed out before we came on this morning, essentially your business is a business of rejection in recruitment, and you work with people on a daily basis. And you've also done some interesting work in terms of looking at each interaction and the different context of interactions when you put it in a digital context and the importance to be adding value. I wonder if you might just comment on some of those points from yourself.
Absolutely. I think for us, there are 3 parts of the equation. Perform today, we have to transform and innovate. And for us, the innovate agenda is your last point. Think through the disruption. I'm a CFO and I always say to my finance people, we can stare at today's results or build tomorrow's results, because we're very focused on collecting the money of today's business model, and we all know it won't be tomorrow's business model, like you said, for the bank, and we need to ask the same question. So the first thing we did with our Grow Together initiative, and Grow Together is about how we grow with our customers in a new way, and how we let our people grow together with technology so that it's a positive experience for them. The first thing we did is mapped the customer experience using psychometric analysis. We talked to a number of customers. We talked to a number of people who actually work for us. And how does it really feel to go to our branch? We talked to our branches. And from that, we mapped what you call that customer centricity. And that's easier said than done, because people are very much in today's business model. But I learned if you bring them along the journey and make them own that, and that they can define that themselves, you create a lot of ownership in doing it. But I think you said it all. That's the most important. And when you do that, you see 2 things. You see where to play. What new activities do we need to add value in that new way? And for us, that was ADEA. We're the first end-to-end online provider of staffing solutions where there is 0 branch contact. And the reason why we're winning with that is A, we're partnering with the best on the technology, but even more so, we replicated really that deep insight of what we know much better than anybody can replicate, is our institutional knowledge. And that's what companies today need to do, is to really understand that what they add value today and what new business models you do. The second thing is how to win. Because how to win also gets redefined. And I think those 2 questions are very easy questions to answer yourself. It's the where to play, like on telecom, is changing quite rapidly. For us, the same. We need to add new value to the customer, and the how to win you need to think through.
Very interesting. So the customer centricity as the kind of the North Star, this kind of requiring a shift in terms of, you know, where is the unique way in which you can add value. One of the things you mentioned there, Miguel, is around the partnerships and the kind of almost the ecosystem approach that starts to emerge. And one of the things that stood out for me, Salil, in the research was that you found, I believe, that the digital visionaries are far more likely to be engaging very actively in partnerships and cross-industry partnerships. And that's something that we kind of anecdotally heard, but it's the first time I've seen data on that. I wonder if could you shed a little insight on some of the findings there?
Absolutely. Thanks, Derek. I think the points made earlier with partnership, thanks. What we've started to see and what the research seems to point out is there's a lot of benefit that comes when visionaries start to work with a technology partner, of course, but also across the ecosystem. And there's a real drive for change. The point that Miguel made about how Salesforce makes that happen, their ability to create the transcend set of customers is the way we saw the visionary client base from the data that we found. The partnerships are also working on an element which brings in skills. The example that you heard from Hans, where there's massive requirement for reskilling that comes through existing set of skills, but also new skills that can be more easily built in. So that's the sort of partnership that's required to drive the change. And visionaries seem to be the ones who are the early adopters of that.
Great. I mean, I guess if we talk about skills and we talk about individuals, I mean, okay, we look at customers and their behavior, but this question around the skills required and the skills gap potentially. I'm very interested to hear, Hans. I mean, how you must have some insight from this one, and even also Miguel afterwards from what you're seeing across the enterprises that you're servicing. But Hans, this question of skills. I mean, it's there, and we hear conflicting information as to whether this is something we can do something about in time or not. I mean, what's your perspective from your experiences?
I think this is the key question. In today's world, new opportunities for companies and people are emerging. We just need to get the workforce ready for it. And I think the world is realizing we're the largest provider of outplacement. We put 350,000 people per year into a new job who've been laid off. And with the churn of technology, that's not the future because the cost of society is too big. We have already been doing retooling, reskilling in many countries. We acquired General Assembly last year. And with that, we're the largest provider of reskilling and retooling solutions. We know what our customers need, and we know how we can help them do that. Retooling, reskilling is really energizing me. I did one of the GA courses because if you work in finance and you don't know data analytics, you might as well retire. And I mean that. If you think in batches as CFO, you might as well retire. My son is a millennium. He wants it every day. If I tell him we do monthly reports, he looks at me. Who are you? And it got me thinking. But the interesting thing of retooling, reskilling is I think companies need to recognize it. You need to partner, like we partner with technology. They can partner with us. And you don't need a university degree to do certain things. You can take a truck driver and reskill him on coding, which is happening as we speak. So you can in 3 to 6 months. And the interesting thing is for both companies and the candidate, we know if you reskill and retool, it drives better productivity for the companies and it gives a higher salary to the candidate. We have been doing it already long in Japan. We are doing it in France. We're doing it in Italy. And now with General Assembly, we're the first one to offer this globally around the world. Because retooling, reskilling makes sure you get your workforce to the opportunity of the technology of tomorrow. And it's a huge opportunity for all of us. But if we don't do it, it becomes a societal issue. So I think the need needs to be recognized because you can't say you get your pension at 70, but at 50, we don't need you anymore, which is the sad reality sometimes. So I think we all need to work on this, but I know through my own eyes, having seen it, this is the future.
Great. So it is possible. Miguel, just one angle on this. You know, we often have this human capital, human labor, but you know, we're individuals, and the fact that we can change is also, you know, it's also dependent on whether we want to change. And your organization has always been very focused on purpose, and I wonder how that sort of plays in terms of also creating the right culture where people want to be able to transform.
Okay, so can I hold on that question for 1 second, because I would love to make a couple of comments on this, the ecosystem and the reskilling. But I'll get back to the one because again is close to my heart. So yeah, the people, the innovators, the companies with the transcend mindset, always by definition, they move fast, they move across the whole value chain, and by definition, they partner with the key players in their value chain or in the ecosystem. Typically, and this is very important, all of them have an API strategy inside the company. In other words, they're able to understand what are the key processes to connect with the external world, be it partners in the supply chain, be it customers, be it suppliers, and they turn those processes around through an API, and they give access to the ecosystem into those APIs. So that's, you know, that's called the API economy, and it's fundamental. And you know, Salesforce is one of them. We have 4,000 partners that extend the solutions of Salesforce. Obviously, Apple was probably the first one. But in banking, you have banks that have basically opened the API so that financial advisors can offer banking products, et cetera, et cetera. Now, on the reskilling thing, there's not much I can add, to be honest with you, because you know, you are the expert in that area. We do a lot on. I mean, there is an article from a Harvard Business Review called "The Jobs to Come." It's still not a book, but it will be a book. And it's fascinating. It talks about the jobs that don't exist today, but they will exist. And we're seeing that every day. There are many things that people are working on today that schools didn't teach. We were commenting earlier that the educational system is probably 50 years behind. In countries like Spain or South Europe, is pretty much run by the government. They have zero incentive to change, definitely not at the speed that the business, the world is changing. So I think we have an obligation, all our companies, we have an obligation to go out there and reskill for free the youth and the elderly people. I think the people that turn 50, 55, and they can learn. They still have another 20 years of personal and professional growth. Youth unemployment in Europe 35 to some countries 50%. They don't have jobs because they're useless. I mean, we hire a lot of, they are useless. They don't know anything. So the first thing you need to do when they come is, forget about everything you've learned. Here's what you need to do. And I think we have a big obligation as a company, as companies, to help reskill and prepare youth and older people for the jobs to come, which links well with your question now, which is, I think the global 4.0 is sort of the theme of Davos. Globalization 4.0 is the theme of Davos this week. And if you read the paper that Professor Klaus wrote, what he's saying actually is cool, because obviously the world is going against globalization, it's going to nationalism, etc. But what he's saying is to solve the problems of the world, the real problems of the world, which is mainly the growing inequality gap. Okay, by the way, mainly caused because of digital, because of the skills, etc. We need to all work together. Corporations need to work. It's a multi-stakeholder dialogue on a global basis. And companies have a key role to play. And Salesforce plays a role. We have this program called 111, 1% pledge, which is basically 1% of the equity, 1% of the time of the employees, 1% of the products we give to help non-profit and great causes out there. And, we're already 40,000 employees, so we really help a lot. But every company needs to have a program and really have a very clear action plan with their employees. Okay, 88% of employees want to work for companies that have a purpose. So I think we all have an obligation there.
That's great, thank you. Just before, we're a little constrained on time, but I do want to just open up to see if there's any kind of questions, burning questions that folk have, either on things that have been covered or things not. If not, oh, great, yeah, please.
Thank you so much for this distinguished panel. My name is Irene Hell. I run a press agency and a journalist network called Friends in Media. And it's amazing how concerted you are at Infosys. And Mr. Milano, you just said you have this obligation towards society, and said you're doing a lot to help the NGOs, that your company is becoming more attractive. I would like to learn more about the incentive of doing good as a company, solving the problems, making more money, and getting better work skill.
So maybe just for, because I think this might be being live streamed, so just for anyone who's watching online, the question here is, just to repeat, is interesting to see these good activities and the commitments that all of the organizations are making. Any comments on the alignment of incentives for doing good while doing well? And maybe we'll use this as a kind of a lightning fire round to also maybe wrap up. If you want to give quick thought on this, and if there's any other sort of final thought that you want to leave people with, maybe I'll invite you each to run through that also. Maybe Hans, we start with yourself.
Sure, as CFO, I have to make sure that we always deliver the numbers, but I also have the whole pleasure of doing our Grow Together transformation. We do, I think, the whole purpose-driven, I think first is a mindset. That you truly believe that if we bring to technology and we reskill the workforce and we really make people together better, that we're creating a better world. And when you create a better world, you create a better business. So for me, it starts with a true belief. On our incentive program, because we have obviously lots of people deep in the organization, we have changed our incentives. We are measuring very deeply now what we call the Net Promoter Score for the people who also work for us in the factory. So that is not just about, are you happy as customer in the narrow way, but in a deep way, we bring along how associate thinks of us, what are we doing for them, how are we bringing them along, are we helping them to be ready for the workforce? So that's for us a very important thing we added. We're adding that to our annual report this year. So what we're doing on that front, and we're obviously also working with NGOs and society, because I think you said it very well. The what question is easy, the how is always a little bit more difficult in business, and I think this is a societal opportunity actually if we bring business together with governments to make them see that the education system won't be able to cope. One, I think it's too classic, but they don't really know what customers want. So partnering with businesses who do know much better what are the skill sets you need, because it's not so easy.
Maybe Miguel, and we'll have the final word from Salil.
Yeah, so our CEO, Mark Benioff, many years ago here in Davos, he was talking to the press and he was always saying, the business of business is to change the state of the world. Okay, you could believe that he's a romantic, or as you said, if we have a better world, we'll have better business. I think it's a combination in his case, and in the case of Salesforce, it's a combination of everything. Of course, we owe it to our shareholders also. Okay, we need to provide shareholder returns, but it is demonstrated. There is there are many studies out there, but one that on McKinsey that says basically the company that looks at the longer term horizon across many different values that focus on improving the state of the world, those companies on average grow 47% more, not 47 points more, but 47% more, and they have 36% more returns for shareholders. So at the end of the day, the shareholders win. If you create the culture where you really want to change the state of the world and improve it for the long run. If you go down the road a little bit, you see the Salesforce launches, it's all about the oceans. I mean, in 2050, there will be more plastic than fish in the ocean. Okay, can we do business in a world where there is more plastic than fish? I don't think so. We will not be here. So yes, we're worried about those things. Our employees want us to worry about those things. They want to work for a company that cares about those things. I spent all employees at Salesforce have 7-day vacation. We call it VTO, volunteering time off. In addition to, lucky Southern European, I have 28 days of vacations. In addition to that, I have 7 more paid by Salesforce for me to go to Africa and to help this school with my family. And multiply that 40,000 people, okay? We get $300 million of grants. We help approximately 30,000 nonprofit organizations with our software. We give it for free so that they can connect with their donors in whole new ways, et cetera, et cetera. So listen, every company has a way, has an angle to help and change the world. If we have a better world, we would definitely have a better business and shareholders will be happy.
Fantastic. I think, so this very rich insights from everybody here. We started off with the why, the mindset. We looked at a number of kind of emerging clarity around the how. And then really it comes this in terms of the purpose, the contributions, and the broader sort of responsibility, I think is clear. But I think we'll finish with a final word, I think is yours, Salil. Brought us all here together. Maybe you can offer some final thoughts before we all go into the rest of our days here.
Thanks, Derek. First, it is incredible to be on the panel with Miguel and Hans. We had not planned it in a way that it would end with purpose, but the questions spurred it and some of our discussions in the morning. And it's genuine because these are things that in different ways I've discussed with each of them prior to this panel months and years ago. So it's really good to see that that's something that's coming through. 2 points I want to leave everyone with. First, on doing good and doing business well. Infosys, fortunately, has also had this tradition. The founders started this company with a real vision to make a change to the world. And in that, over the years, have set up what's called the Infosys Foundation, which is focused primarily in India. And then we set up an Infosys US Foundation, which is focused at this stage in the US, and we are starting to replicate that in most of the countries that we're operating in. To give you one example, we have started to engage with high school teachers in the US to help them to teach STEM skills to high school children. And this is a huge program driven by the Infosys US Foundation and something that we think will make a tremendous impact. And across the company, a percentage of our profit every year is fueled into both of these foundations and the activities that they do. And then maybe just back on our topic, I think the digital radar discussion for us is hugely exciting. It was good to see in many ways, even as we come from different perspectives, we have a similar view of what the market is doing. We believe that change is quite dramatic, and the ones that adopt and build upon the change are going to greatly benefit from it and leave the others way behind in terms of how they compete. We encourage each of you to look at the research and look at the inputs that all of us have shared with you, and even look at some of the examples we have in the other part of this area, and get some benefits, hopefully, that we can apply to your business right away. Thank you. Thanks, Derek, for the session.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. And please stay around for some conversation. Thanks.